You're listening to the Telltale channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. So the next article I wanted to take a look at is entitled, MAGA Occultist, We Should Cancel the Election Since Democrats Haven't Earned It. This is by Beth Stoneburner on the Friendly Atheist website, written March 28th. Right off the bat, there is a claim that Trump supporters are cult members. Now, I have addressed this in a video before. I actually talked with Stephen Hassan about this on my YouTube channel. Stephen Hassan wrote The Bite Model, and he wrote a new book called The Cult of Trump, and he basically gave his defense for why he believes that Trump's supporters are cult members. And for the record, I completely agree with him on that point. I believe that it is a very strong cult of personality. And I haven't really talked at length about how cults of personality operate, but I'm getting ready to work on a video all about it. And I'm hoping to put it in a book that I'm writing at this moment, so keep a lookout for both of those things. Just know that I have classified it as a cult. Stephen Hassan, the guy who wrote the Bite Models, classified it as a cult, so that's my position. Let's read the article. Right-wing broadcaster Josh Bernstein, who claimed just last month that the only options on the November ballot were Trump or death, now wants to cancel the presidential election altogether because Democrats don't deserve to challenge Trump. I'm not exactly sure what that means. This is a quote. In times like this, you should be kissing the ground that President Trump walks on, Bernstein said. You have a true leader in the White House that's handling this thing and doing the best job possible. In times like this, you should be kissing the ground that President Trump walks on, Bernstein said. You have a true leader in the White House that is handling this thing and doing the best job possible. If this was a Democrat, forget it. There would be hundreds, thousands of more people dead already. Okay, the thing about leadership is, as a leader, you have to point in a direction and go. You can't waffle. You can't not be sure. You have to be positive of what the goals are and what you're doing. And if you need to change direction, then you get out there and you explain why you're changing the direction and you do it. Donald Trump hasn't really been doing that at all with this virus situation. Trump gave clear leadership in the beginning. He said, we're locking down. I feel like a wartime president. We're moving forward from here, and we're doing this thing and this thing and that thing. Here are the data that we have. Here are the statistics that we have. These are the next steps, according to the scientists. I felt really good about what he said, actually, in his original speech. And then not long after that, he comes out and he starts tweeting things contrary to that. So originally, in the very beginning of this, he said he didn't really believe it. It was a hoax and blah, blah, blah. You know, I can forgive him for that because for some of it, at the very least, it went on way too long. But let's just say he didn't know how serious it was. He has the intelligence community at his disposal. He should have known how serious this was. But okay, let's say he didn't. From there, he should be giving us clear leadership through this situation. He should give us direct instructions for what the country needs to do to get out of this and what he's hoping for as goals and results. And he did that at first, and then he moved on to, I want to see the churches packed by Easter. That's what he said. I want to see the churches packed by Easter. That's waffling. That's going back and forth. That's changing your goals and direction completely. We had momentum. We were moving. We were ready to do this thing. We were ready to self-quarantine, and we knew that we had the president of the U.S. behind us on this. And now you're reversing course. And just before I got in here, you reversed again and said, we have to wait till April 30th. Now, that just so happens to be the right call. But which is it, man? You flip-flopped 4 times now. There's no leadership. There's no clear leadership here at all. I would rather have Mike Pence at the helm right now for this virus situation as the political leader than Trump, because the United States needs clear political leadership during this situation. There are people without jobs, without health insurance, millions of people looking death in the face at this moment, and this guy doesn't know what he wants to do. He doesn't know what the right decision is because he keeps going back and forth, back and forth. There's no good political leadership. Put somebody in charge who knows how to lead. Donald Trump ain't it. Let's continue reading. In times like this, you should be kissing the ground that President Trump walks on, Bernstein said. You have a true leader in the White House that is handling this thing and doing the best job possible. If this was a Democrat, forget it. There would be hundreds, thousands of more people dead already. Sure, by firing the pandemic team, downplaying the seriousness of the threat when he could have acted, and claiming the virus is no worse than the flu, Trump saved lives. Everything makes sense when facts don't matter. Like I said, I understand if Trump was downplaying the seriousness in the very, very beginning, say in December, early January, I get it. But by February, he shouldn't have been. He has access to the intelligence community. He knew how serious this was. He was just trying to save the stock market at that point. A futile effort, as we saw. I say we just cancel the election, he added. Give President Trump until 2024 to not only get the economy back roaring again, but get rid of this virus. But you know what, Democrats? You haven't earned the right to even challenge this man. Why? Because you tried to usurp his power from the beginning with your Russian coup. Then you tried again with the Ukraine coup. Then you tried to impeach him for absolutely nothing, and now we have this. For the record, let me tell you guys what happens if the election isn't held. I've come to find recently, if the election is actually canceled, the Speaker of the House becomes president on January 20th, 2021. That's what happens. It's in the Constitution. On January 20th, this president's term ends and the next president is brought in. So if Trump just said, no, we're not doing it, we're not having an election, I'm just declaring myself president for the next 4 years, his term would end, and the Secret Service and the CIA and the FBI and the military would all report to the next person in line after the vice president, since the VP is also part of this administration, which would be the Speaker of the House, which is Nancy Pelosi. So Nancy Pelosi would waltz right into the White House and kick Trump out. That's what would happen if Trump canceled the election. For the record, if you guys are worried, I wouldn't be. There's no way Trump could cancel the election. It would not be in his best interests. And I'm sure somebody's probably explained that to him by now. Let's continue reading. I don't recall anyone making this argument when Bill Clinton was impeached. The fact that Bernstein dismisses entirely the backbone of the impeachment case, the numerous instances of corruption uncovered in it, the corruption that occurred before the election, and the endless examples of Trump's lack of character and integrity, there's no reason to keep him in office at this point. We've suffered enough. I agree. I really, really hope that we get Trump out of office. I'm not a huge fan of the other option at this moment, but I just don't want Trump there anymore. He just comes, I said this on Twitter recently, Trump just comes across to me like an old moron who is obsessed with people who he views as important liking him. Like, he goes to the G20 summit or whatever, the G7 summit, talks to world leaders, and the next day he goes out on stage and lists out every one of them painstakingly by name. Sat down with Angela Merkel, sat down with Justin Trudeau, sat down with President Xi, sat down with Putin. It's like, oh my God, are you going to sit there and list literally every world leader that you've ever met in your life? Who cares? We know they're world leaders, and we know that you've met them before. Just get to the point. What are you trying to communicate to us? It's like he gloats because he's proud of where he is. It's like he's trying to prove to the world that he's not a loser. And that's just like really bizarre to me. Like, if you're not a loser, then you don't have to prove that you're not a loser, it seems to me. It's like he thinks that he's a loser and he's trying to convince himself that he's not. And he thinks that he can do that by convincing other people that he's not. It's just really, really weird. I wish the guy would go to therapy. Seriously. If he would go to therapy, I just think it'd do him a world of good. It's just really sad that his emotional state is where it is. That he needs validation the way he does. It's just really sad for him. Let's continue reading this. This is another quote from Bernstein. You've stolen the first term away from this president, and he's still been successful despite all your bull. Okay, now hold on. The first 2 years of this president's term, the Republicans controlled the entirety of the government. He had a Republican-controlled Senate, a Republican-controlled House, and a Republican-dominated Supreme Court, and, of course, a Republican president. So if he didn't get done what he wanted to do in those first 2 years, then he is truly incompetent. He had everybody behind him. The entire U.S. government was behind him for 2 years. And now the vast majority of the U.S. government is behind him. The Supreme Court, the Senate, and the presidency are all three Republican. The only Democratic part of the U.S. government is the House of Representatives. So, honestly, if he can't get done now what he wants to do, then he's still incompetent. He should still be able to, considering how heavily weighted it is in Republicans' favor. Anyway, you've stolen the first term away from this president, and he's still been successful despite all your bull, and all your garbage, and all your horrible rhetoric, and all your opposition, and all the horrible things you've done with the deep state and everybody else. What the hell is the deep state? You don't deserve the right to even run in 2020. How dare you even have the audacity to run anyone against this president? Trump's inability to accomplish anything that helps working people stretches back to his first several months in office when he had complete GOP control of the government and no impeachment investigation. That's true. As for successful, he's wrong on every count, but just look at what Trump has done to the stock market, his favorite measure of success, to see why even his usual base may be turning away. Okay, now let's pause there. I just want to point something out. The stock market is tanking at this immediate moment as a result of the virus. The catalyst was the virus. I happen to believe that it was a bubble, that the stock market was in a bubble. Okay, let me just step back and explain. We live in something called a credit-based economy. Okay, so that means we loan money and we borrow money. When you live in a credit-based economy like we do, like pretty much every modern nation does, you have something called boom-bust cycles. This is just economics 101. You usually have a little boom every 7 years, followed by a little bust. And then a big boom every 70 years, and a big bust. So the last big boom was the Roaring '20s, and the last big bust was the Depression, 1930, early 30s, late 20s. So people were expecting the next big boom and bust to take place around the year 2000, 2010, somewhere in there. And we did kind of see that. We saw a big boom in 2000. The dot-com bubble is what it was called. And then we saw a big bust in 2008. We had a small bust earlier than that from the Iraq War. But we had a big one, the 2008 recession. And from the 2008 recession, we slowly started kind of gliding upward little by little. It's possible to prevent those cycles from taking place, the booms and the busts like that, every 7 years and every 70 years. It is possible to avoid that in a credit-based economy. But the thing that you need to do is regulate the economy. You have to push through regulations. And FDR understood that. And that's why he signed in, I believe FDR signed in the Glass-Steagall Act to basically regulate the big banks and things like that. And that was supposed to hold us through to kind of prevent those booms and busts from happening as dramatically or as often. Bill Clinton, I believe, undid Glass-Steagall. He just completely, he erased it. And what happens? Big boom, big bust. So people have actually been expecting a big bust. They were expecting it in 2016, actually, because the last bust happened in 2008. So about 7 years after that, we're looking at 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. But Obama, it seems like he adequately regulated the economy well enough to prevent the bust from happening, at least during his term. I honestly expected the economy to just plummet. I expected this was a bubble. And here we are, 2020, and this bubble has popped. I can't blame Trump for that exactly. I don't think he knows what he's doing at all. I think he's just running on autopilot. I think he doesn't even realize how economics works, is my suspicion. But he has smart people around him who do, and who are kind of trying to manage it and keep it going as an attempt to make Republican administrations look good, understandably. But the coronavirus situation just, boom, just drove the economy right into the ground. Like I said, I can't really blame Trump for that. It is what it is. But it was bound to happen eventually, so we'll see what happens from here. It'll come back. It's just going to be a struggle. Let's continue reading. Of course, elections are written into the Constitution. That used to matter to Republicans once upon a time. Somehow, criticizing Trump, and rightfully so, gives him power to rule as a dictator, even though free speech, too, is in the Constitution. This is a fringe view, but make no mistake, it won't just be people like Bernstein saying it in coming months. Republicans love changing the rules if it gives them more power. They'll try to cancel the elections if it looks like they're going to lose. Don't fall for it. Update. This is hilarious. After Bernstein realized Trump would no longer be president if an election doesn't take place, that's right, it would be Nancy Pelosi, he took back everything he said about canceling the election. He admits what he said earlier wasn't 100% accurate. Oh, I love it, man. I love it. People are so stupid. I swear, people are so stupid. I don't know how they function on a day-to-day basis sometimes. They're so stupid. They're just propaganda machines.